Well, today we are going to discuss the poem Locksley Hall, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. The poem was written in 1835 and published in 1842 in his collection of poems called Poems. Locksley Hall is a dramatic monologue. Its speaker, the central figure, is a young man who was left an orphan early in life somewhere in India, where his father was killed in a Maratha battle. He was then brought to England and was brought up at Locksley Hall by a tyrannical uncle. Critics have attempted to locate Locksley Hall and identify it with particular buildings, but with little success. In fact, it is an imaginary place, and the utmost that can be said is that it must have been situated near the Lincolnshire coast, for there the sea is magnificent. There are sandy tracts, and as he has said in the poem, the hollow ocean breezes roaring into cataracts. The wild setting of the hall accords well with the wildness of Lincolnshire. It was at Locksley Hall that the speaker fell passionately and violently in love with his cousin Amy. He loved her truly and devotedly, but she did not prove worthy of him. It was indeed a one-sided love affair. Overawed by the threats of a father and persuaded by the wise maxims of her mother, she agreed to marry another man who had gold but who could never love her. Frustrated and despairing, he left Locksley Hall to go out into the wide world. As the poem opens, we find that the speaker has just returned to the scene of his love after a lapse of years. He asks his companions to leave him alone for some time, and when he is left alone, he indulges in this long monologue, which gives us a peep into his soul and brings out all the bitterness and frustration within him. The impression that we gather of him is that he was once a noble, adventurous youth who would have done much in life, but frustrated love has twisted his personality and turned him into a boastful, blustering, vain, and conceited person. There was a time when he was young, when he nourished his fancy on tales of science and had full faith in progress and the wonder that would be. It was the spring of his life, and in the spring, thoughts naturally turned to love. He loved his cousin Amy, who at once reciprocated his love, saying, "I have loved thee long." For some time, they were all in all to each other. It was the golden time of life with them, but the romance was soon shattered. Cousin Amy proved shallow-hearted, falser than all fancy fathoms, and slavishly agreed to marry another, a person much inferior to her in intelligence, culture, and refinement. The speaker's heated imagination carries him off his feet, and he fancies to himself the married life of Amy. He imagines that her husband is a drunken clown, gross and earthly, but Amy, like a dutiful wife, has to minister to his needs and look to his comfort. It would have been far better for her to have died than to suffer such moral and spiritual degradation. Married to such a gross husband, who values her only a little more than his dog or horse, Amy often remembers the love of the speaker for her, and at such moments she feels the acutest pain, for sorrow, crown of sorrows, is remembering happier things. But then consolation would come to her in the shape of her baby daughter, whom in her own turn she would nourish upon prudential maxims and teach her, as she was herself taught, to stifle the passion of the heart. The speaker strikes us as more comic than tragic when he regards Amy's baby daughter as his latest rival, whose lips will laugh him down and whose baby fingers would press him away from the mother's breast. Tennyson has depicted a very cynical attitude towards womanhood in this poem. Frustrated at the faithlessness of Amy, with deep indignation burning in his heart, the speaker rails and fulminates not only at womankind but on the corrupt and degenerate times as a whole. Cynically, he calls woman the lesser man, with weaker passions guided more by irrational impulse than by reason. They are weak and shallow-hearted. They allow themselves to be bullied by their parents into marrying moneyed and money-minded fools, and in their turn compel their own daughters into obeying such prudential maxims as were their own undoing. Disgusted, the lover decides to mix with action, lest I wither away. The poem at the same time also records the evils of the age. But what vocation should he take up? What are the possibilities open to the speaker? He finds that he has fallen on a corrupt and degenerate age in which materialism, commercialism, mammon worship, snobbery, and social climbing are rampant. It is an age in which, I quote, every door is barred with gold and opens but golden keys. Every gate is thronged with suitors, all the markets overflow, unquote. Power, prestige, and authority go with money, and a poor man is insulted and humiliated at every step. There was a time when he had full faith in science and progress, when he had dreamed a glorious future, a future in which argosies of magic sails will fill the sky and there would be parliament of men and the federation of mankind, and a golden era of peace and prosperity would be ushered in. The prophetic fervor of Tennyson in this part of the poem has been noted and admired by all since ages. But alas, now his golden dream has been shattered. His dreams that the argosies of magic sails have been used for raining bombs and ghastly dew on mankind, and instead of the parliament of man, he sees the nightmare spectacle of people hungry and oppressed, marching forward in revolt to get their revenge and their rights. Disgusted and with hot indignation burning in his heart, he decides to leave England and go to some far-off tropical country, away from the haunts of civilization, where life is primitive, peaceful, and more in keeping with the laws of nature. In such natural surroundings, he would enjoy life more than in the steamship, in the railway, and in the thoughts that shake mankind. There he would marry some savage woman and breed a race of dusky children. In this poem, Tennyson has shown faith in science and progress. Very soon, the speaker's patriotism is, however, and his pride in his own country and its progress reasserts itself, and he realizes that he, the heir of all the ages, would never be foolish enough to lower himself to the level of beasts with lower pleasure and lower pains. He concludes, better 50 years of Europe than a cycle of Cathay. However, he is determined to bid farewell to Locksley Hall for good. With faith in progress, inspired still by the crescent promise of his youth, he will go out, for the mighty wind arises roaring seaward, and I go. Where does he intend to go? The close of the poem has been intentionally left vague and ambiguous, and we cannot say whether, like the hero of Maud, he too goes out to take part in some patriotic war.